You know, when people talk about PlayStation classics, they usually talk about Metal Gear Solid, Crash Bandicoot, or maybe the Spyro games. But a different game comes to mind for me personally. Released on January 1st, 1996 in America, Jumping Flash was met with mostly positive reviews from critics. However, the game became overshadowed when bigger games like Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie came along. Thank you, Wikipedia. And hey, I have a lot of fond memories of this game, and I think it's about time I looked at it again. Jumping Flash is a first-person platform shooter, which is a combination that isn't explored very often, and I'm not sure why. The story here is as follows. Baron Aloha is, quote,
an evil scientist who frightens children and is bent on slavery.
And now he's taken all of the interesting parts of this planet. Why?
Aloha's evil plan is to turn it into a huge private retreat for himself.
Anyways, Universal City Hall hears about this from somebody, so they send out their best to go and stop this madness. A robotic bunny named Robert. Okay, cool. So now Robert has to stop Aloha and fix the planet. But to do that, you have to find 4 carrots and go to the exit. Kinda like the red coin missions in Mario 64, except that there's one mechanic that makes this a lot more fun than those. Jumping! Jump here, jump there, jump on top of your jumps. It works really well because the levels are designed with so many platforms to jump on, and the game tells you where the jet pods are. And so the enjoyment of the levels comes from getting to the jet pods rather than finding them, I guess. The environments in this game are pretty varied. Each level has its own theme, and all of them are catchy and fitting to the area. You'll be going through grasslands, deserts, volcanoes, tundras, amusement parks, cities, and this place. The visuals are very surreal. Maybe it's because you're jumping around above the clouds, or maybe it's because of these enemies. Frogs with top hats, weird plant things, and laser shooting giraffes with candy cane legs. I don't know, man, this game is pretty out there. These enemies aren't everywhere, and all of them are easily dealt with, so I usually find myself avoiding them unless they're being particularly annoying. One thing that bothers me is that if you want to look around, you have to stop where you are, hold R1, and then look. This game came out before the DualShock controller was around, but I also can't help but say that having to stop and then look makes the game feel dated. I mean, this went bad ages ago. Probably should throw this out. There are a few times when this is a problem, but it's more bothersome in the later stages. As I said earlier, you're only told where the jet pods are if you're in close range of them. So in the later stages where the maps are bigger, it becomes pretty hard to find these things, and I think that having a quicker way of looking around the environment would have been nice. But again, I can't really fault the game as much as the controller. Shame on you. After every 2 levels, there's a boss fight. Bosses you fight in this game are a dragon, a robotic scorpion, a clown, a mechanic turtle, boxes, and Aloha himself. I really wish that there was more to Jumping Flash, because it only takes about an hour to beat the main game's 6 worlds. And after that, the only things left to do are the extra modes, which basically make tweaks to the original levels and relocate the jet pods. Overall, Jumping Flash is a fun game that can get a little bit bothersome towards the end, and is also pretty short. But that's not where we stop, because less than a year later, Jumping Flash 2 came hopping onto store shelves. Also, my copy's from Blockbuster. This game's story takes off right where the first game's story ended. After being defeated, Baron Aloha retreats to Little Moo Moo, a tropical paradise that he uses as a hideout, when suddenly...
Little Moo is visited by a stranger! There is nothing stranger in the universe than the creature known only as Captain Kabuki. Tipping the scales at a whopping 220 bazillion tons, he uses a kung fu grip larger than metropolitan Chicago to shred Little Moo and add it to his fantastic collection of bottled wonderlands. Unable to cope with the monstrosity that is Kabuki, he calls Universal City Hall and begs for help as his beloved hideaway is made into so much Swiss cheese. After listening to the Baron's plight, the interstellar dispenser of justice decides to send the only being capable of dealing with a menace such as Captain Kabuki, the freedom-loving, robo-heroic Robert. Tuned up and ready to go the distance, Robert leaps to the scene.
So we're back to doing the same thing as before, but instead of collecting jet pods, we're now saving the Moo Moo. So
Jumping Flash 2!
It's just a collection of new stages, which is fine as long as the stages are enjoyable to play. The problem with this game is that all of the new levels are much bigger than they were in the original, and so it takes a lot longer to get through a stage. so every stage feels like you're looking through a haystack to find needles, or moo-moos. You'll be seeing places through Hawaiian-themed beaches to industrial factories, with the music still complementing the areas perfectly. The story, I feel, is also a bit better than before, probably because we see more of the characters here than in the first game. For better or for worse. After going through the story, Baron Aloha teams up with Captain Kabuki so they can defeat Robert once and for all. Unfortunately, it's the same extra modes as before, but this time with a really hip voice. Yo?
Ready to rock? One down, let's boogie.
It's like they took all the minor issues with the first game, fixed them, and broke what worked. Not to say it's a bad game, everything that was good about the original is still here, but that's sort of its biggest setback. Rather than expanding on the original's gameplay, Jumping Flash 2 just makes new levels that sort of miss the point of what made the original so great. And yet there was another Jumping Flash game. This one was called Robot Mondiu, and it was only released in Japan. And this is not Japan. Maybe one day I'll get to play it, but that day is not today. Hi there, thanks for watching my video. If you liked what you saw, then click the like button, and subscribe if you're in that sort of mood. If you didn't like what you saw, then maybe you'll like a different video of mine instead. And lastly, there's some social networking right about here.